Every legend has a beginning, right? Well, today, we're cracking open the case file on the very first story that introduced the world to its greatest detective. We're going to dive deep into a study in Scarlet and watch, step by step, how Sherlock Holmes was born.
So our story doesn't kick off with some brilliant detective. Nope, it starts with a broken man. This is Dr. John Watson's London in the 1880s, and you can just feel the misery, can't you? He sees it as this huge, lonely city that just sucks people in. He's fresh from the war in Afghanistan, and honestly, he's totally lost. So how in the world does this lonely army doctor wind up at maybe the most famous address on the planet, 221B Baker Street? Well, it wasn't some grand search for adventure. It all started with a very real, very boring problem. He was broke and needed a cheap place to live.
Let's just put his situation into perspective. He's a doctor, sure, but he took a bullet and got sick, and it just completely wrecked his health. He's trying to get by on this tiny little pension all by himself in this massive city he calls the Great Wilderness of London. Really, his only move is to find a roommate, a total stranger, to help pay the bills.
And this, right here, is where fate just steps in. Or maybe it's just London being London. He bumps into an old buddy, a guy named Stamford, in a bar. And that one chance meeting is about to change his life and, literary history forever.
So Watson explains he needs a roommate, and Stamford says, "Funny you should mention it, I know a guy in the exact same spot." But then he gives this really weird warning. It's like, who is this Sherlock Holmes guy? And why would he be so hard to live with? The mystery starts before we even lay eyes on him.
Watson's intrigued, and let's be honest, he's pretty desperate, so he agrees to meet this mystery man. Before he knows it, they've taken the rooms at 221B Baker Street, and Watson begins what he calls his study of his absolutely bizarre new roommate.
And what a study it is. I mean, can you imagine? Holmes is a total puzzle. He's obsessed with facts and knowledge, but his hobbies are just out there. He's mixing up weird chemicals, testing poisons on himself, playing the violin whenever he feels like it, and oh yeah, he likes to beat dead bodies at the morgue with a stick just to see how bruises form. This is definitely not your average roommate.
Watson is just completely mystified. How can someone be a total genius about some things and have zero clue about others? Well, Holmes explains it with this amazing idea, the brain attic theory. He basically says your brain is like a little attic, and it only has so much space, so he's super careful to only fill it with things that are useful for his work. Everything else, it's just clutter taking up valuable room. This isn't just a weird quirk, it's the secret to his whole method.
And this list that Watson makes just proves the theory perfectly. Look at it, he knows a ton about chemistry, but absolutely nothing about literature or astronomy. In fact, he doesn't even know the Earth goes around the sun. Why? Because, as he says, what the deuce is it to me? It doesn't help him solve crime, so out it goes.
So what is this work he's always talking about? What's the point of this strange, hand-picked collection of facts? Well, Watson's about to find out, because Holmes is finally ready to explain his one-of-a-kind job, the science of deduction.
Watson finds this article in a magazine, making this wild claim, that from a single drop of water, a true thinker could figure out that oceans must exist. Watson just scoffs, thinking it's total nonsense. And then Holmes calmly tells him, "Oh yeah, I wrote that."
You see, all that weird knowledge, that intense focus, it's all for one thing. Holmes reveals he's a consulting detective, the only one on Earth. He's the last resort. When Scotland Yard is completely stumped, they bring him the case, and he solves it without even having to leave his armchair.
And then he gives Watson a mind-blowing demonstration right on the spot. You remember how, when they first met, Holmes knew right away that Watson had been in Afghanistan. It wasn't psychic powers. He just observed. A doctor with a military posture, a tan that stops at the wrists, a tired look on his face, a stiff arm. You put all those pieces together and only one place fits: Afghanistan. It's simple, really, when you see what others only look at.
But that's all just theory, right? Well, a chance to see the science of deduction in action shows up in an urgent letter. A real case, a really weird and bloody one, is about to put Holmes's ideas to the ultimate test. A note arrives from a detective at Scotland Yard. A man's been found dead in an abandoned house in Lauriston Gardens. And, you guessed it, the police have no idea what happened. So, Holmes and Watson race over to the crime scene. And the first weird thing is the body itself. He's a well-dressed man, but there's no wound, no mark, nothing to explain how he died.
But there is blood.
splatters of it all over the room. Holmes takes one look and confirms none of it came from the dead guy. So whose blood is it? And where are they?
And then it gets even stranger. When they move the body, a plain gold wedding ring falls onto the floor. It's a woman's ring. What is that doing here?
And finally, the most sinister clue of all, written on the wall in what looks like blood, is one word: Rach.
In this moment, right here, shows you the huge difference between the police and Sherlock Holmes. The official detective, Lestrade, thinks he's cracked it. He figures the killer was trying to write the name Rachel and got interrupted. But Holmes just rolls his eyes. Rach, he says, is the German word for revenge. They're not looking for a woman, he tells them. They're looking for a motive.
So, while the police go running off to find this imaginary Rachel, Holmes starts to trace what he calls the scarlet thread of murder that runs through the whole messy business of life.
Holmes just moves like lightning. While the cops are stumbling around, he puts an ad in the paper about the lost ring to set a trap. He figures out the murder weapon was poison, given in a twisted game of chance. And then he calls in his secret weapon, the Baker Street Irregulars, a bunch of street kids who see everything, to hunt down the one person he's sure is connected, a particular cab driver.
Think about it. The police are totally clueless. The killer knows someone's on his trail. So how can one man, all by himself, possibly catch his target in a city swarming with millions of people?
The answer is he doesn't. He makes the killer come right to him. He uses his irregulars to call the cabbie to 221B. The man walks in, and in a flash, Holmes snaps the handcuffs on him and makes this incredible introduction. And right there, in that moment, the legend is born. Not in some dusty book, but with a brilliant trap and the thrilling end to his very first hit.